Mountains and Waters Alliance exists to heal the deep cause of the climate emergency and the rift between the dominant human culture and the whole of life on Earth. Together with all beings, we protect and restore the living Earth. We create and nourish communities rooted in meditation and ceremony that practice farming as activism and defend land, water, and life as healing work. We learn, teach, and invite others to join us. Today, Shodo will be talking on the topic changing the structure of reality, which draws from her upcoming book, which is entitled Open Reality, Meeting the Polycrisis Together with All Beings. So with that, I'll welcome Shodo and give me just a moment to adjust these pins. And Shodo, welcome. Glad you can join us today.
Thank you so much. I'm always happy to come here. You have a great group and you ask interesting questions. So for the whole time I've been writing the book, I've been avoiding working with the material from the book. And now I'm at a place where it seems like the right thing to do. And it kind of comes in the category of marketing. So I'm allowed to do it. So I'm going to start, before going directly to that, I'm going to start with some background. And the background is the nature of our existence, and you might recognize it as interdependent co-arising or something like that. I speak not in Buddhist language mostly. So everything lives us. Everything breathes us into life. Everything witnesses us into being. And we, in turn, live, breathe, and witness them into existence. Things arise and things fall, dependent on each other and linked together irrevocably. We are neither separate nor impermanent nor permanent, but keep completely embedded in the web of life. There's a spark of awareness in this individual being and in every individual being. We look out at each other and recognize each other. And this is how we create each other, by seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, sensing. And this doesn't only happen with humans. So that's sort of, you might say, it's a manifesto. It's my description of reality. Now, a quotation from Zen Master Dijong: not knowing is most intimate. Not knowing is to act without expectations. The only thing we own or know is the life, the actions we've already taken, and those create our lives. And they create the world we live in. And that's how we create things. If there are guarantees, we are doing business with the world. We're in the marketplace. Being in the marketplace, buying and selling, is part of the problem. It's part of how we got here. So, and then I'm going to read a quote from David Abram, which is, again, moving into the place that I want to speak from. The animate earth around us is far lovelier than any heaven we can dream of. But if we wish to awaken to its richness, we need to give up our detached spectator perspective and the illusion of control that it gives us. That is a terrifying move. To renounce control means noticing that we really are vulnerable to loss, disease, to death, but also steadily vulnerable to wonder and unexpected joy. Contemporary civilization is terrified to drop the pretense of the view from outside, the God trick, the odd belief that we can master and manage the earth. But we can't. What we can do is to participate more deeply, respectfully, and creatively in the manifold life of this breathing mystery we're part of. So that's the starting place. And this seems to me like a deeply Buddhist teaching, expressed by various people, and I've done my best to put words on it. And now the chapter that I titled Changing the Structure of Reality. So first, I said meditation and ritual change that structure. It's not about changing laws of physics, biology, chemistry, or anything else. I say matter is embodied consciousness. Zen Master Dogen said, all beings are Buddha nature. Previously, people had said, and it was a profound and important, all beings have Buddha nature. So that's a good thing. But he goes further and he says, we are Buddha nature. So consciousness is who we are. Consciousness is what we are. People think that Buddhists say everything is your imagination and nothing is real. But I think they misunderstand it. Everything is consciousness. Now, there's a philosophy term, panpsychism, that seems to me to be the closest philosophical term to that. Everything is consciousness. And everything is Buddha nature. And if you ask me to explain the connection between those, I'll make something up. Okay. So, meditation. I'll say more. I use the term meditation and then I explain Zazen. But first, in human life, we're sort of materialistic mostly. As a society, we certainly are. And so there are rules. And some of the rules say you're alone. And loneliness is the fundamental state of being. And there are other rules that say, oh, humans are the best. We are the masters of the universe. Both of these are versions of isolation. So when we sit, we create an opening. Things become flexible. We allow things to be as they are. When I think about Zazen, I think that's its fundamental thing. We allow things to be as they are, and we participate. We participate in things creating each other, and we participate in things creating us and us creating them. I used to study physics, and I had images of the world, and they were all swirling. You know, everything was swirling and everything was affecting each other, magnetic fields, electrical fields, gravitational fields, and all this stuff. And now there are pictures of the night sky and various things happening in it that feel like that image that I have that goes back to my physics days. So if we go deeply into sitting, which for me takes a while, I don't do it in an hour. I calm down in an hour. I calm down, allow things to be the way they are. But when we go more deeply, and there are states called samadhi or a state called jiju samai, self-employment samadhi, which is basically seeing how this all works. So we're just recognizing how it is. And so there might be a heightened awareness. And we might do rituals. And the rituals that we do in Zen definitely offer a structure, because what I'm talking about is changing the structure. So but when we come to a ceremony, even the ceremony of Zazen, we often do purification rituals. For instance, washing our hands or putting on special clothes. We might burn incense. We might make prostrations. And then we enter the Zendo and we bow. We're saying, gratitude. We're saying, there are great forces here. Sometimes we name them as bodhisattvas. Sometimes we acknowledge the ancestors who are humans on this earth. And then, especially, we see this openly in older traditional indigenous forms of Buddhism. But I can see the connection between the things we do in modern Zen. For instance, we feed the spirits. We make a meal offering if we're eating the food, if we're eating a meal. We have chants and we have talks. And those are all expressing the nature of our relationship with the world around us. And sometimes people discuss, well, who counts as a sentient being? I count everybody as a sentient being, even, molecules. And some people don't. So that's an entertaining side trip in the Buddhist world. And so if we do ritual, if we're doing chanting, if we're doing bowing, or if we're doing the ritual of sitting still and letting things be the way they are, there's a kind of heightened awareness. And then we return, we ring a bell, we bow, we leave the Zendo and we bow. Katagiri Roshi said, when we leave the Zendo, we bow outward. We bow to the whole world that is still the Zendo. Everybody has different customs on how you bow coming in and going out. But I feel an affinity for that one, which was the first one I knew, which is, okay, let's bow to this Zendo now, because this is still the Zendo. There's no place that is not the Zendo. There's no place that is not the home of spiritual practice. Okay. And then talking about Zazen in particular. Back in my first few years of Zen, Tejo Munich was a priest in training, and she was one of the people who gave talks. And she gave this amazing talk. She would study really hard. And he was reading something that referred to the monks as disporting themselves in Zazen. Well, disporting is an old-fashioned word. So she looked it up, and it means play. And then she said in this talk, she thought there must have been a mistake with the translators. So she got out her kanji dictionary and looked up the Japanese characters. which I do not have written down here. There were two characters, and both of them meant play. So the person, the ancient Zen master who wrote this text, said, "We are playing. Sit down, face the wall, and don't move." That's called playing. And so I looked up the English word, disport. It comes from a French word, desporter. I ignore my pronunciation, which means to carry away or to entertain. The dictionary says disport means to enjoy oneself unrestrainedly, to frolic, to divert or amuse oneself, to play in a carefree way, to amuse yourself in a lighthearted fashion. So if you can remember being a child coming home from school and running around, rolling in the grass, jumping into leaf piles, or just chasing each other around the yard, that's an experience of disport that we might have. And recently, there's been various research about how children need to play and adults need to play. So I remember in my childhood days running across the grass, the wet grass, on an early summer morning, just because it felt good to do it. I would turn cartwheels, mostly badly, for hours trying to get better at it because it was such a pleasure to use my body and to experience it. And then I remember going into the wild places that I was fortunate to live near, looking for the iris. So the next year it took me, I came out 2 months early because I didn't want to miss them. And eventually I learned when they actually bloomed, which was in May. And then that land was sold and it was turned into a development. And the places where I played were turned into grass and pavement. But there's a wild place that nobody can take away from us. It's the body and the mind. And it's very wild. Over 10,000 microbial species form 3% of body weight. And they're untamed. And if we didn't have them, we wouldn't be healthy. Not being in control is the nature of human well-being. So I'm feeling awkward. It's like I am reading, and I'm reading something that was wonderful to write. But I'm trying to be present with you as well. So I mentioned letting things be the way they are. That includes that our mind is making thoughts. Now, we have an idea that thoughts prove our existence. That was Descartes. And what goes along with that idea is they were either permanent or were annihilated. And that's why non-Buddhists accuse us of nihilism. And there's a whole chapter or more in the Samdhinirmochana Sutra explaining how if you let people fall into nihilism, you are committing this great crime on doing enormous harm. And so I try to speak in a way that doesn't lead there. The delusion that's part of the three poisons is about that permanence and absolute existence. We exist in change. We're created every moment. And sitting zazen is letting it be that way. So you drop your thoughts, and they come back, and you drop them again. And if we stop fighting for control, even control over our thoughts, then we're alive. And that's how zazen is play. So once, I forget when it was, I realized that my thoughts were an effort to prove that I exist. It's like I kept coming back. I have one of those noisy minds. And so when I would try to quiet it down, I always failed. And when I realized that the thought coming back was just going, here, I'm here, I exist, I want to be here, it made it a little easier to tolerate them instead of fighting them. So by playing, we change the structure of reality. There are still some rules. There's still gravity. You can still get an electrical shock. You can get cold or hungry. It's like ordinary physical rules are there. So what Dogen says about it is that when we sit silently in samadhi, we become one with the interdependent co-creation. We're throwing our open and luminous stillness into the creation of everything. And what I propose when I say we're changing the structure of reality, I propose that when we meet reality in that way, it actually affects the workings of the world around us. It's like, releasing tight muscles and your body moves more easily. Releasing the tension of our battle to control the world. And it lets both us and the world move more easily. I have this thought based on reading a particular biography of Buddha that I have not found again, and I want it. But the image that I got from that book was of Buddha growing up in a sort of a traditional and tribal society. His father, they call him a king, but he was probably a village chief. They were wealthy, yes. You can sort of, if you cut down all the stories by 90%, you still have these, they were comfortably well off. And things worked well. They lived immersed in nature and the sacred. And in traditional Cambodian Buddhist villages described by Courtney Work, who is an anthropologist who studied them for a lot, she saw they had a sense of how to live with nature. And so when she came to a village for the first time, she had to introduce herself and to tell the spirits what she was there for. I don't know if she made offerings at the shrines, because they had shrines. And then they had various names for various beings and things that I don't remember. But I remember that a house was something that was created both by the spirits and by the humans. It was a joint effort. It wasn't a clear the land and conquer everything human effort. It was something that was built by all of us together. And that's the shape of reality that I want to live in. And talking on these electronic machines is a little hard. And living inside a house with square walls is hard. And both of those are also terribly convenient. I love that I can talk to people in other places and listen to people in other places. So my proposal is that we can find something of that way to imbue our lives again. Not that we can be hunter-gatherers or pastoralists. We can live smaller. We can live closer to the earth. But the dedication of our energy to the sacred is an entry into being vibrantly alive. So I've thought the way that Buddha lived, Buddhism is felt like an arrow shot forward in time so that we have access to this magnificent way that people have lived in a society that mostly forgets it. Now, I can't say what the other religions are doing, so I'm not discounting them, but I'm going, oh, this religion started in this place, and it brings us this possibility. And so I propose that we act the way those past people did, recognizing that the earth is our home and beings are our family. Treat them well, work for their well-being, and partner with them in the common cause of the well-being of the biosystem. Oh, make offerings and prayers, settle into the stillness of deep meditation, stop interfering with things as they are, place ourselves in the hands of all beings. That last phrase comes from Daniel Quinn, who spoke of two ways of living. There's a way of living as gods, and there's the way of living in the hands of the gods. And when you live as gods, you have to do it all yourself. But when you live in the hands of the gods, everybody is supporting you. But you have no guarantees. So I have a Wendell Berry poem. In the dark of the moon, in flying snow, in the dead of winter, war spreading, families dying, the world in danger, I walk the rocky hillside sowing coal. He wrote that in 1968 during the Vietnam War. And it's still, the things he wrote then still feel so appropriate now. Just walk the hillside, making life so you enrich the soil, you create life for the future. And it's creating for everybody and everything. It's not just to feed our family or the animals that feed us. I think the last thing I will read is from Shohaku Okumura. And I was looking for a Dogen quote when I found this thing he wrote, and it's like, so it's on my website. He says, our lives are patterns of the fabric produced by the loom of time and space. When we see the individual things, each one is impermanent, constantly changing without any fixed independent entity. But this work of weaving continues. Our life is a result and a gift from people and things from the past. What we do now influences later generations, whether positively or negatively. The loom is weaving the ancient brocade of eternity, while the spring is new, fresh, and different each year. The spring of the entire heaven and earth is manifested within a tiny plum blossom in the cold air. The tiny blossom actualizes the spring of the entire heaven and earth. All individual things are working together as a whole without anything being excluded. And so when I talk about changing the shape of reality, I'm talking about entering that sense of awareness. And I don't think I want to read anymore. I think I want to stop and invite comments and conversation.